Hello, everybody. Welcome to the discussion, Shaping the Regulatory and Supervisory Framework in the Baltics, Key Messages to the Market. This is the first live event of the Baltic FinReg Summit 2020, which is organized by Cobalt in cooperation with the Finance Latvia Association. Together with an outstanding panel of speakers consisting of the heads of the financial supervision authorities of all three Baltic countries, and representatives of the European Banking Federation and Finance Latvia Association, we are going to examine the current trends and challenges in the financial regulatory environment and how it is reshaping the Baltic financial sector. My name is Pauls Rauceks. I'm an editor at the bi-monthly Latvian business magazine Ir Nauda and a commentator at the weekly magazine Ir, and I will be moderating the discussion. But before we start, I'll explain the ground rules. We have a lot of participants, and to make sure that we don't keep interrupting each other, everyone except for the speakers will be muted during the course of the discussion. However, that does not mean we don't want listeners to participate. You are invited, I would even say encouraged, to submit your questions or comments in the Q&A window, which you can open with the button at the center bottom of your Zoom window. We will keep an eye on what's being written there and then address your questions to the appropriate speaker during the discussion after the presentations. It's possible that we won't get to all the questions, so don't be shy. The sooner you submit a question, the better the chances that it will get a hearing. I'm sure you've all heard of cases where meetings like this one have been crashed by trolls or other internet hooligans. If we see anyone acting improperly, I'm sure we won't, but just in case, we will block them so that everyone else can get the most out of the event. And finally, this discussion will be recorded and will be available for viewing later on the Cobalt homepage. Okay, that's it. So let's get started. Now, I would like to invite Laudis Liepa, managing partner at Cobalt, to say a few introductory words. Please, Laudis.
Dear Pauls, thank you very much for this vivid introduction into our FinReg event, which is FinReg number 4. If we would look back the year 2017, when for the first time in the history, if I may say so, of the Baltic financial markets, law firm Cobalt, together with financial regulators of all the Baltic states and Association of Banks in Latvia at that time, currently Finance Latvia, had organized the Pan-Baltic event, a forum for a discussion group, a meeting place. At that time, of course, we were able to meet in person. We started in Riga, we then moved on to Vilnius and then to Tallinn, and now we are back in Riga again. We have decided that despite the COVID-imposed restrictions on physical meetings, nevertheless, we have to meet also this year for a number of reasons. First of all, capital markets in the Baltics are still capital markets of the region, and they are integrated to a large extent. And there are transactions, there are movements that demonstrate it very well. Number two, Baltic states had demonstrated ability to cross borders in times of difficulties and to be able to get together for an important decisions in relation to fighting the pandemic. You will definitely note the Baltic bubble, and I'm sure at one moment we will be able to extrapolate and to use our experience used during this harsh time earlier this year for not only medical purposes, not only hygienic purposes, but also for many more important steps to take for the integration of the region. And of course, last but not the least, people who are dealing with the capital markets and financial markets are keen to know what is going on, what is happening during these extraordinary times. And they also need a meeting place, even if the meeting is not physical, even if we have to distance ourselves, and even if we have to meet in such an unusual online format. So I believe that this is a great opportunity for us to, again, come back together and discuss important financial, regulatory and capital markets issues. This is going to be first of our meetings of 8th of October, but the next one will follow next week. 15th of October, we will meet with a group of different speakers, but the topic of FinReg will be related to capital markets, and it will follow, will be subsequent to the discussion that we will conduct today. So, Pauls, thank you very much for your agreement to help us navigate and also manage today's discussion.
Thank you, Lars. Cobalt's partner in organizing the summit is the Finance Latvia Association, and so it is only fitting and proper that the proceedings should be opened by Ieva Tektere, chairwoman of the association and also chairwoman of the board of SEB Latvia. Ieva, please.
Thank you, Pauls, and good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, participants, speakers, and regulators. So I'm really honored to open this summit, this discussion. And I know that this definitely will lead into very open and transparent, in-depth discussion on the future regulation for the Baltics. So everybody here knows that financial industry definitely is a crucial for economy, for business, for society, and of course to get a good financial system, financial industry, we need effective regulation for the sector to perform stable and to support economy. However, I think that financial regulation doesn't mean just setting the rules or defining the rules. I think it also means definitely how to monitor those rules and also how to enforce them. And before the summit, I really want to reflect on two things. And the first, if we look back like a couple of years back, then we can definitely see that the industry together with the regulators in the Baltics have done significant work to enforce and to improve our stand when it comes to establishing robust and resilient financial system for protecting us against money laundering, against terrorist financing. And that has been a long journey, tough journey for all of us together. We have already seen the fruits of that. For example, when we come to Latvia, and definitely we can say that Latvia managed not to be included in the so-called grey list, which is an achievement for us. So the hard work has been done. I think that Baltics and Latvia as well, we are sort of outperforming the rest of the world in this area. At the same time, we see that each of our country has its own regulation in this area. But the AML is international problem, international issue, and therefore I think that one of the topics which I really would like to hear today and feel today is that there is dialogue among all three Baltic countries, and that we are stepping into the further harmonization of requirements in this area, in the regulation in this area. And the outperformance against the rest of the world goes into more efficient and harmonized rules for our banks in the Baltics. So urging really us all to be standing united and standing together. And then the other thing which I wanted to reflect to was the recent experience with COVID-19 times. And I think that these times definitely for the financial industry and for the whole economies of our countries definitely highlighted the importance of digitization, importance of technologies and technological development. So, and for financial sector, I think this has been a very important time when we see that for us, digitization and technology is not only that our services are available. For us, it's even one step further because we want to provide services which are available, but at the same time secure and at the same time very compliant with all the regulations so that our customers feel secure. And we see that this area is also challenged a lot when it comes to financial industry. Therefore, I think that this also probably is one part where we can try to seek more harmonization across the Baltics and see how we can remove burdens for our customers to be part of this digitization development. So I think recognizing the role of the supervisors in this tough and challenging times, and in so important area like financial industry, I really think that such conferences like this can help us to be on both sides, like supporters for sustainable development of financial industry, to make sure that financial industry is growing, sustainably growing, becoming even more transparent, becoming even more competitive and reliable. And with that and through that helps our economies to develop, to grow, and yeah, so to make the financial sector more stable, together with the whole Baltic economy is more stable and developing. So I really wish that this conference, this discussion encourages valuable conversations today, fruitful discussions, really promoting our cooperation. So wishing the good conversation and good conference for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. As you said, the issue of Baltic regulation and supervision has been much on our minds recently, certainly in Latvia, and I'm sure in our neighboring countries as well. A lot has changed, but there are also still very many unanswered questions about the regulatory regime. Luckily, at this event, we have assembled the ideal panel to address these issues, the heads of the Baltic supervisors in the 3 Baltic states. Katarina Gomina, Director of the Supervision Service of the Bank of Lithuania, Kilvar Kessler, Chairman of the Board of the Estonian Financial Supervision and Resolution Authority, Santa Purgaila, Chairman of the Financial and Capital Market Commission of Latvia, and I hope he will join us for an outside perspective, Sebastian de Brugger, the Chief Policy Officer at the European Banking Federation. Each of our panelists will start with an introductory statement about their view of the current state of the regulatory framework and the issues they are facing. After that, we will launch into a discussion during which the panel will also have a chance to answer questions from our listeners. So, time to begin. Ms. Purgaila, maybe you could start. Santa Purgaila, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you hear and see me well. And now I will share my screen with the presentation. Just a second. Of course, we was asked to really think through and prepare some thoughts about the actual top priorities now we as a regulators and supervisors are dealing with. So definitely I should say that I have stated here top 3 for as of today, and I will deep dive in each of them and add some more flavor of what we are doing in terms of next priorities as well. So I hope those like 10 maybe 12 minutes I spend on that will also cover the view from Latvia side. So as we all know, the COVID-19 actually severely affected our priorities and list of our actions and priorities as well. So definitely, as we see that call it the first wave or beginning of the second wave of COVID-19 gives the uncertainty also in the financial sector, and given the primarily role of supervisor to ensure the stability of financial system and protect depositors and investors, of course, the top agenda question is to follow up on COVID impact on economy and the financial sector. The second issue still is the AML, different topics and questions, issues. But this is a bit different shape. We are now into that question, and I will also explain a bit more on our actions towards AML issues as we go. And the third, and definitely the top priority as well for us today, is sustainability related questions. And this is also something we are now have put on our agenda as also a very important question when we look into the future, because the environment, social and governance, as we know, the abbreviation ESG factors, and the role of ESG actually in financial sector as well will become more and more severe, and we should leave our steps towards the sustainability of financial sector as well. So, but then maybe a couple of words in each of those priorities. So definitely now, as of today, Latvian banking sector is resilient and have now gone through the first shock of the COVID, and we see that despite lower profits in first half of the year, still I think our financial system is strong. We have very good ratios, good capitals kept for different shock absorptions, and liquidity are well positioned. And I still believe that also given the outlooks of macroeconomists, we believe that we will survive, and we will end up in a very good shape. However, this unpredictability and there may be expectations of some negative impact still is on our table, as there was the moratorium applied, and as the moratorium will end, we need to follow up what kind of situation in the loan books appears in the banks. So definitely there might be some deterioration in the portfolios, and we will follow up on the provisions and different situation in the different industries, how it evolves, and how our banks actually act toward that. So, but I should say that we are also in that matter. I believe that there is a common European approach. Our supervisory authorities in Europe as well, and I believe my Baltic colleagues will not let me to lie to you that there is the approach towards how to treat different aspects, also COVID-19 related, is applied like on the European, and I hope also on the Baltic level simultaneously. Next, of course, is also last years in our financial system, the AML issues was on top of agenda all the time. We went through difficult times. There was a phase of de-risking and the implementation of different legislative and different kind of rules toward the financial system to become transparent, resilient, and to acknowledge the risks related to AML. But as of today, I should say that the main focus now is on seeking balance between proportionality, requirements, risks, and common sense. And here I should say the very important is how actually we are proceeding with those issues. And I believe that interinstitutional cooperation, when we talk to each other, when we are bringing those different issues, problems on a table, only that way, with the proper dialogue, we can ensure that everyone understands how and what actually we should do to actually build this as a sustainable approach going forward, but not harming the overall businesses, not harming the ability of financial system to cope with those risks. We are very much on implementing and discussing with banks what does it mean risk-based approach, and we are now in a phase to adjust our regulatory framework to actually to promote this ability to assess the risk and manage the risks. Also, I think as we are not the the island in some ocean, we should act accordingly in good cooperation with our Baltic stakeholders, European stakeholders, and also globally with all our partners to make sure that we are also thinking the same way. We are implementing the same approach towards our financial system. And also, we have now gone through different discussions also with industry, with also participants from different businesses to discuss about new compliance culture in Latvia. This is very important to have this common understanding. What does it mean for everyone? And to ensure this new compliance culture, everyone should understand that the result, the achievement actually starts with ourselves. Whether we will succeed or not depends on how everyone actually acts towards this new compliance culture. And also, of course, we've been in quite good discussions with the financial sector as well to introduce the advice first approach. And now we are seeking what should be changed in the legislation as well, to give the possibility also for the banks to be more explanatory to their customers, to open up and discuss maybe those issues, to give this opportunity to consult and discuss with customers those where we see those lower risk customers, where actually we see that might be a situation that customer just doesn't understand maybe the approach or needs some consultation in that area. But here I also should say that we've gone through and already are far ahead in our Baltic cooperations when we talk about like global processes in the world. And I'm so glad that there are a lot of pan-Baltic and also like Baltic plus Nordic initiatives, as we do have pan-Baltic players in the financial market. We also do have now pan-Baltic supervisory colleges. We have started with the IML issues, but I believe that those supervisory colleges will widen, and also we will discuss those different supervisory issues also on a pan-Baltic level as well. Yes, third, sustainability. I think everyone now finally have understood that the sustainability, green finance, and greening of financial system is the part of our green course. And there I should say that the role of supervisor, of course, also is quite important. lately we sort of kick-started a discussion on sustainable finance, and that was good discussion with the industry, different representatives, also Finance Latvia and ourselves. And we shared our views on what should we do, each of us, to go to that right direction, to implement different approaches. And here, when we talk about the sustainability, or how we understand the ESG factors, we understand that we are talking about also new evolving risks, such as risk of transition or the climate change risk or physical risk. And of course, there is the we expect that in a good cooperation and dialogue with the industry, already now, when we still awaiting, precise regulatory framework, we can act proactively and include those sustainability considerations into our business strategies and processes, and actually. Those risks, what I mentioned, also banks should already assess those risks and put maybe already in their risk strategies and develop the risk framework and scenarios, how to assess those risks and how to implement those risks into the stress tests. Of course, I should say that a very important role in the sustainability is governance, and governance factors, how we implement governance, and how the role of the boards is in this aspect as well, how the system actually is built to address this the future sustainability, the green factor in our business strategies, our long-term strategies. What we have started with is the disclosure. So those climate-related disclosures, there is the regulation which will become in force next year's in March. So, and this is just the first step, but what we are looking forward is how the second and the third step will come into those discussions, and actually just through the active discussions with the financial players like banks, insurance companies, different kind of capital market representatives, we can understand what is more, important, and what kind of examples we can build on the actual regulatory framework, and then bring it to the Europe and to the EBA, who is now given the mandate to put all the regulations into the capital requirement regulations. So this is very, very complicated, but I think this is the last moment to start with, and we as the regulator have put this the sustainability issue, or the sustainability, as the core one of our priorities as well. But also, I wanted to touch upon two other very important initiatives or topics in our agenda. One very important is the fintechs. I really congratulate my colleagues in Lithuania, where the a common approach, like state, all regulators, central bank, everyone actually put the fintech strategy as the top strategy for the state as such. And actually, guys, you have very good achievements. However, we also here in Latvia are approaching and actually looking into the regulatory framework, which is related how to actually promote and how to help those fintechs to grow. And what we see definitely that not always the existing regulatory framework helps us to do so, but I think this is also globally the problem, not just here in Latvia or in Baltics. This is the major problem actually in whole Europe, as the evolution of financial services and all innovations actually develops much faster than regulations can go with that. But also we are discussing with our fintech companies that they should consider this regulations as the framework for best practices, and go and develop and discuss and come back with their solutions. And actually, I'm looking forward also to have some good discussions, and also today, maybe our Lithuanian colleague Katarina will share how they are dealing with that. And I think, but just to conclude on the fintechs, I think we have set that set for us that we will, more go on the quality rather than the quantity when we measure our success. And then there we see actually some very good developments also in Latvia happening in this area. And I hope, yeah, we will discuss that maybe also later on in our panel. And last but not the least, challenge in our daily agenda is the growth of capital market. And definitely our priority is to develop local capital markets as well, and to support the European level capital market union. And I see also that, and I'm really pleased that this capital market topic is on agenda on European Commission's level as well. And there have been also a lot of discussions about the European capital market, what kind of differences are there, the fragmentation of this capital market, and what to do actually. And in sense of what to do, actually, we are also taking an active role. And we have now already we have now we have now in a stage of development of 10-step approach. Then we are putting those suggestions into the document, and we are looking forward to have a wide forum on the capital market development later this year or very beginning of the next year. So, and as I really like to discuss those more about the future developments rather than maybe problematic issues, then I'm looking also on the capital market development as one of very interesting and also of course challenging issue we are into and trying to deal with. So with that, I'm thank you for everyone, and looking forward to have a good discussions in the panel.
Thank you, Santa. Our next speaker is Katarina Gomina. She's the director of the supervision service of the Bank of Lithuania. Please, Katarina.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'll try to share the screen in just a moment. Yes. Just a moment. Yeah, do you see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. So good afternoon again, everyone. First of all, thank you for Latvian Banking Association for organizing, and for Cobalt as well for organizing this event. I think it is really useful, and it is nice again to see Santa and Kidvar, with whom we actually have quite a warm relationship, and I'm really happy about that. I will speak a bit about our objectives for the upcoming 3 years, main objectives, and I will be speaking more from supervisory perspective because Bank of Lithuania has a lot of functions, so I will focus only on those which are directly related to supervisory issues. But first of all, I would like to announce about reorganization of our supervisory authority. So from the November 1st this year, the name, first of all, the name of supervisory service will be changed to financial market supervisory service. So it is a slight change, but we are happy about that because sometimes when you write that you represent supervisory service, people just don't get what supervisory and what service we represent. Yes, and what else maybe to share with you from this reorganization. So we will have a separate division on digitalization and advanced analytics. And we will have separate division as we see that IT risk, cyber risk is really growing because of financial market moving to electronic space. So we will have a separate team which will be dealing with operational and IT risk as well. One more change that will happen, I put under my directly under me our money laundering, anti-money laundering and digitalization divisions. So it basically represents my personal goals for the upcoming maybe couple of years. Yes, we want to make sure that we are really resilient to money laundering, and we want to digitalize our supervisory service. So, so about digitalization. So it is, I put it as a first priority for me personally, for my team. And here I'm speaking not about fintech, not about development in the financial sector. Here I am speaking about our internal goals. Yes, because when financial market develops in terms of innovation, in terms of digitalization, the question for me is, will we be able to supervise this market, which will be totally transformed? And if we only operate with Microsoft Word, Excel, and these basic tools, will be actually be able to efficiently and effectively supervise financial market. So here, we will have a team which will focus on subtech and regtech, so supervisory technologies and regulatory technologies. We already have some projects on artificial intelligence, so we will try to figure out how and whether we can use artificial intelligence in disputes resolution process. Yes, how we deal with our consumers that come to us and ask to resolve dispute with a financial institution. The other example, we already have a couple solutions, robotic process automatization solutions. Yes, how we put basically robot in some process, and we can just allocate some tasks not to people but to the system. Yes, and especially talking about these small and annoying jobs or functions that requires a lot of efforts from people, but it is just you know, very repetitive and really a small job. So digitalization is one of major priorities for us. The second would be about fintech. Yes, thank you, Santa, for kind words for our country. Personally, I do think that we did a great job in ensuring that our ecosystem corresponds with digitalization of financial market needs. But living in this development stage for 4 years, I think that we already set the road for further developments in this market. But from the supervisory point of view, I think that we need now to put a bit more effort to ensure that this market is really mature enough. And here will be focused on, of course, AML, cyber risks, on governance and on compliance. So we will try to grow this market to the state that is quite corresponding with our expectations. Of course, we will do this not from applying sanctions or perspective, but more from trainings and dialogue with industry about our expectation as regarding compliance and other issues as well. So the second priority for upcoming maybe 1 or 2 years will be to try to build this fintech market to the state that will be satisfactory for us. And the third goal for us is about financial products consumers. Yes, we want what we see right now, especially with rapid evolution in financial market. So some clients are just not prepared probably enough to understand what they are buying, why they are buying only from one maybe financial product provider, not for other. What we see is that a lot of consumers suffer from fraudsters, yes, financial fraudsters. So here we want to make sure and put additional effort from our side that people actually get the financial product that corresponds with their needs. And the other really important dimension, and Santa mentioned it a bit, the risking. And it comes with financial inclusion probably issue when some either people or businesses which especially which trade with maybe higher risk countries or in a higher category of business area, they actually are struggling either to keep a banking relationship or even to start a banking relationship. So we want to make sure that our financial market actually, again, corresponds with business and people needs. So we do not say to foreign investors, sorry guys, you cannot make business in Lithuania just because you do not have access to the bank account. It is really does not satisfy, I think, our state needs. Yes, so that's all from my side, the three main topics, but of course, I agree, and Santa mentioned it, some other relevant issues like COVID-19, yes, how our financial institutions will be able to cope with the consequences, and sustainable finance as well. Yeah, definitely there will be some work to do, and it will be definitely the priority not only for government but for regulators and supervisors as well. So here I stop, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Katarina. Our next speaker, here's my video. Thank you, Katarina. Our next speaker is Kilvar Kessler, the chairman of the board of the Estonian Financial Supervision and Resolution Authority. Please, Kilvar.
Thanks, and thanks for Cobalt and other arrangers to have this this event already in a row for years. So it's already tradition, at least for us, and it seems that also my other Baltic colleagues are also very keen to participate here. I mean, to start off, somehow I feel like this guy in class who didn't prepare his homework. I mean, my colleagues have been doing stellar presentations, and I have a little to add. Somehow the topics will repeat themselves. It shows that we, as a supervisors, we feel and see risks and risks environment in the Baltics in very similar way. However, I mean, let me express my thoughts on 3 areas of potential interest, or actually our supervisory interest and your potential interest. First is COVID-19 risks. Second is AML legacy risk. Third, legislative initiatives in Estonia. And of course, I mean, as an overall remark, we continue to perform our strategic goals. We as Finance Inspection, as supervisory authority, as a resolution authority, and our strategy is available at our website www.fi.ee. So feel free to familiarize our strategy, and also the kind of performance goals are disclosed there. But then to COVID-19 risks. So basically the first wave, the banking market came through good, I think in all 3 Baltic states. We had also government measures in place, the central bank measures in place, and also private moratoria in Estonia. I think in other Baltic states it was slightly different. I think in Lithuania it was partly public moratoria, partly private. In Latvia, I think it was private moratoria as well. We also had a ban on distribution of profits, and now we have even strengthened it a bit on the basis of ESRB respective recommendation. And then the operational risks. Actually, we were afraid that COVID will hit the operational side of the banking industry quite hard, but we were careful and lucky enough that it didn't happen. And by we, I mean the market and the supervisor together. Now the second wave. I mean, we see signs here and there. And we are pretty sure that there will be consequences on credit quality. So basically what we do 2 things with regard to credit to portfolio, which is the main risk. First, we monitor the credit portfolio, and quite carefully. You see, end of September, I mean, the moratoria was not prolonged, and the first batch, so to say, of credits will fall out of moratoria, I think beginning and mid-October. So we are pretty prepared here together with banks to see what is going to happen with credit quality. We are also launching dialogue with the banking industry on their potential capital plans to be ready for deterioration of credit quality there. So this is the first block, what comes to the COVID risks. And second block there is issuing guidance to the market. So when the first wave hit the market, we issued pretty fast guidance. And I mean, the prudential side was following the overall harmonized guidance, which was agreed in EBA and SSM, which SSM is the Eurozone Banking Supervisor, ECB. But then the consumer protection side was not that well harmonized. So we already, in the end of March, issued guidance there to market how to treat consumers to credit products mainly. So we are going to continue with issuing guidance. We have issued guidance to market on restructuring of credit agreements. And this guidance has kind of double effect. I mean, first side is prudential side, and then the other side treats the consumer protection part of the story. And if necessary, then we continue with further guidance there. Now the AML legacy risk. I think my both colleagues already were quite extensive there. Let me repeat certain things and emphasis on Estonia then. I mean, basically, we are cleaning up the books. We started the work in 2014. I mean, we have closed all the major AML risks in Estonia. I mean, when I started as a chairman, the non-resident part in our system was 20%. Now it's already, I mean, almost non-existent what comes to the very risky non-resident part of it. So we have basically here almost completed. We are pretty vocal and active what comes to Europe on this issue. So we are active at SSM level, at the EBA level there. And also, as you are aware of, I mean, we have established Luminor AML College, and we have been inviting also our Baltic friends in. And also we have been inviting our FIU into this college. Now Estonia works on the, the improved AML framework, namely on penalties. I mean, I guess we have the weakest penalty procedural framework in the Baltic states. We have to up our game there, definitely, and we will do that. And then the second side, I mean, our FIU was moved from the Ministry of Internal Affairs to the Ministry of Finance. So it will be independent agency under Ministry of Finance. And we welcome this move. It's closer to financial market. We have entered, and it has taken already some time, entered into dialogue with the banking market when it comes to excessive de-risking. We see the solution there in innovative or more modern IT solutions or more modern risk control system, and also private public partnership projects. We have actually launched our own, we call it Masin, which means machinery. So it's a kind of not anymore that manual work, but it's a kind of how to say mixture of IT and human work. It's not a purely artificial intelligence, but it's something in between. So we are also taking steps internally there, and as well as our market. I mean, I think a couple of days ago, our banks announced together one of the local IT or fintech firms that they are putting their forces together to figure out very kind of, how to say, smart system to tackle AML risks. And the last remark on AML legacy is manual evaluation. And I congratulate my Latvian colleagues. It was a tough job for them, I know, for all of us. Actually, we in Estonia, we kept our breath like that the Latvia will pass successfully, because, Latvian, Lithuanian, Estonian problems are our common problems. I mean, the whole world perceives us as a one Baltic region. So well done, our Latvian colleagues. We try to follow your path. However, it will be quite difficult. We know it will be quite difficult, and not because of the financial supervision. We have some other weaknesses in the system, but we are trying as a supervisory authority and agency to help our government and state to mitigate those risks. And then the last topic is legislative or local legislative initiatives. Our government is going, most probably is going to regulate cooperative banking. I think some of our Baltic colleagues, I think Lithuania, if I'm not mistaken, has done it already earlier, a couple of years earlier, quite successfully in my opinion. So my government also is introducing draft legislation on credit and equity platforms, solution on crypto asset management companies. So we'll see how it goes, whether we have some role there to play or not, we as a financial supervisor. And then the second one, we have the kind of second pillar compulsory pension system, and current government then has kind of trying to reform it, so to say, make it more free, not compulsory anymore. And there is also constitutional law case in court pending. So we are waiting for this decision, and then it's clear whether this reform will be swift or not, or it will be postponed. So if the reform will go forward, of course, we as a financial supervisor, we have one key role to play there, that the reform will be carried out swiftly and smoothly. So this was my brief introduction to our further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kilvar. And last but not least, I'm glad to say that Sebastian de Bruver has joined us. He's the Chief Policy Officer at the European Banking Federation, and we're waiting for an outside perspective on what's happening in the Baltic states from him. Please, Sebastian.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you.
Very good. Well, thanks for inviting the EBF to your event, which indeed has proved to be a very interesting event along the years. It's good to have indeed the Baltic countries, exchanging and discussing those important developments. So my indeed introduction will be about some perspective from the European level, from the European Banking Federation. To which, our colleague from, the Estonian Banking Association, the Latvian Banking Association, and the Lithuanian Banking Association are, of course, active members. So a few remarks on my side. Well, of course, starting with the current COVID-19 pandemic situation. We are still very much in, I would say, the middle of a crisis here. We were hoping that situation would improve. Health situation would improve maybe after the summer break, but I think we all know that unfortunately there is some worrying resurgence in Europe. So this is becoming indeed one of the most challenging crises I think not only Europe but the world is facing, and this will of course have a huge impact on the economic environment. I think it was already mentioned. It's still very much the case in Europe, as I mentioned. So the future remains highly uncertain, and I think this uncertainty is also fed by other developments, such as, of course, global tensions, the US election, the UK leaving the European Union. Economically, I think before the COVID-19, we had already in many countries still subdued growth. We have, of course, to face prolonged low interest rate, which also has an impact on banking, obviously. So it looks like we are at a tipping point. I think it's very important also to highlight how much the banks in Europe react positively to the crisis. I think they have continued to play their critical role by providing liquidity for businesses and for, of course, also consumers to the benefit of the wider economy. So they took quite quickly exceptional measures in those exceptional circumstances to support the economy. I think it's very important to indeed highlight that this time the banks are indeed not the source of the problem, but mostly actually part of the solution, given the fundamental role they play as provider of critical services, liquidity, and funding. Now, of course, those actions were not only actions from banks. Public authorities have responded also very positively by adopting exceptional measures to support also the bank's role. You know that bank supervisors have provided temporary capital liquidity, operational relief to banks. They have issued guidance to also make full use of the flexibility embedded in the legislation. And if you look at the measures adopted, actually, I think they are from three main categories: monetary policy, measures, fiscal stimulus package, mostly at national level, but in a very important part now also at a European level, which is also a game changer, I believe. And then a regulatory adjustment, as I mentioned. And why I mentioned that? Because it's also, I think, one of the lessons of the crisis. I think there are many lessons of the current crisis, but one of them is that, at least so far, the regulatory reform, which was adopted the last, I think, 15 years, have proved to be, a good step. So has put banks in a more resilient position, and they were able indeed to withstand the first hit, thanks to this robustness of the regulatory framework. The other thing is also that perhaps the regulatory framework as it existed was not perfect, sometimes too rigid. And I think the crisis has made it very apparent, the tension between the regulatory requirements banks face and their ability to lend to the economy. And that's also the reason why I think both regulators, supervisors have adopted relief measures, sometimes temporary relief measures. Also, they have tried to accelerate some of the measures they were thinking about or already partly adopted in the context of the capital review, the CRR, capital review regulation, capital requirement regulation. So I think the part of the important debate we'll have in the future is indeed to, on the one hand, make sure that the regulatory frameworks preserve the robustness of banks, but also at the same time offer the flexibility necessary for the banks to continue financing the economy, and even more important, to finance the recovery. And that's, of course, will, in our view, be rather important in the context of one of the main forthcoming regulatory work stream, the implementation of Basel IV, which, as you know, has been also postponed with 1 year. But it appears very important for us that we look at the implementation of the Basel IV in light of what happened now during the COVID-19. And also, of course, still, as we advocated beforehand, to make sure that the implementation is also adapted or adjusted to the European specificities. And I will not enter into the details here, but we know that there are many concerns or issues if we, adopt the Basel framework as such without using the room for maneuver, which is actually, in our view, embedded in the framework. I think the third lesson is, of course, also the increasing importance of the digitalization, the digital transformation, which, of course, will be accelerated also post-crisis. I think banks, generally speaking, have proven being resilient also, including on cyber attacks, cyber threats. During the crisis, they have also shifted much more dramatically towards digital services, and this movement will obviously continue. Now, those are, I think, three lessons. Now, if you look at, I would say, the forthcoming regulatory and supervisory initiative that should come and that are already partly being discussed at European level, of course, you can still know that, well, the regulatory agenda is leading the change. I mean, the amount of forthcoming regulatory initiative which are or will be on the table remain quite impressive. I think the President von der Leyen in her State of the Union speech highlighted a number of them. Well, complete the capital market union. You know that the European Commission came recently a few weeks ago, actually, with the Capital Market Union Action Plan, with 16 recommendations. That's one. Secondly, also the clear emphasis on the importance to complete the banking union. So addressing also the third pillar, which has not moved much yet. So the common deposit scheme. And also, I think a part of the completion of the banking union will have to address still some remaining gaps in the resolution framework, something which I think was experienced also in Latvia, when one of the bank indeed was declared, as you know, failing or about to fail, but still didn't met the conditions for insolvency at national level. So there are still discrepancies, I think, in the framework which will need to be addressed. What else was highlighted? I think the strengthening of the international role of the euro, which goes, of course, much beyond, the banking system. But this will also be very concretely translated, for instance, into, support to more integrated payment, I think, initiative or framework at European level. You know that some banks have recently started a specific initiative in this respect, based on the instant payment scheme. Third, of course, the twin green and digital transition. I think the digital transition I mentioned already. The green one is, of course, high on the agenda of the European institution. The European Union wants to remain the leader in sustainable transformation. And there is, of course, a lot of stream also ongoing, including at supervisory level. As you know, I think it was alluded to. So the how to indeed include progressively ESG risk into the risk management framework. On digital, which is of course very important for the Baltic countries, where you have had some very interesting lead so far. I think there as well, the action plan of the Commission was issued last week, if I'm not wrong, and there are a number of actions which we believe are to be supported, notably removing part of the fragmentation in the digital single market. I think it's important, again, as I mentioned, the Baltic countries have been sometimes front runners on some of the issues, but we believe as European Banking Federation that we need, of course, to have a framework at a European level in terms of, perhaps also additional harmonized licensing passport regimes, but also in the context of the EID, importance to have interoperable cross-border framework for digital identities. AML was already mentioned as an important also stream in digital, etc., etc. One perhaps concern we have on the digital action plan is the call for opening further, bank data or bank or finance data. So the idea of open finance as a complement to PSD2. We are of course not against specifically opening further, but we need to make sure that this brings mutual benefit for banks and non-banks, or for non-banks and banks. And also we very much advocate also for banks to have access also to non-banks data. So kind of framework for cross, I would say, sectoral access sharing and sharing of data. Last but not least, and I think I will stop with that because otherwise I'll be too long. is of course the action plan on new comprehensive approach to fight anti-money laundering, which is being discussed currently, as you know, both at the Council and the Parliament. This is something we very much support. I think after the many issues, problems, scandals that banks have faced recently, we need actually to review fully the framework, AML framework. We need more Europe, more integration, more EU level supervision, better cooperation mechanism between authorities, law enforcement authorities, but also financial investigation unit. And last but not least, and that's very important for us as well, we need to establish a framework which allow better cooperation and better exchange of relevant information, both between the private sector, but also from the public to the private sector. We strongly believe that if we want to succeed more efficiently in the fight against money laundering, we need closer partnership with authorities, and we need also authorities to be able to, in a trusted framework, to be able to share further information they have available, so that indeed banks can also focus on, the important, I would say, issue cases going forward. I'm stopping here. I think I've been long enough, but I think very important is indeed as a conclusion that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, will have huge impact, most likely also on the regulatory framework. And secondly, I think it is still clear that regulation mostly regulation at European level are still some, I would say, very much importance going forward in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. We will now move on to our discussion. So I would ask all our panelists to unmute their microphones and switch on their video. I would also encourage all our listeners, if they have any questions, to scoot their cursor down to the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window, and they can write in their questions and we will pass them on to the panelists. Now, my first question for the whole panelists will be returning to something that has been sort of a theme throughout the discussion. Eva Techter mentioned common regulatory frameworks. Lauris said that the Baltic bubble could be an example for something that we do in terms of financial regulation as well. Kilvad said that the Baltic states are seen as a unit. I wanted to ask the three regulators, how close are we to a really common regulatory framework, and where do you see the priorities in terms of eliminating any differences that we still may have? Maybe, I don't know, Katarina?
Yeah, you start. I can start, yeah. Yes, we definitely have some financial services that are quite harmonized. And I'm talking not about Baltics, probably I'm talking about European Union. So yeah, banks, electronic money, payment institutions, investment companies, they are quite, they have quite good and harmonized regulation that allows them basically to operate throughout the European Union without any, local some stuff that they need to take into account. But some of the financial services, like consumer credit, for example, yes, crowdfunding activity, especially I'm talking about P2P, yes, platform operators, there is still severe, I would say, a lack of harmonization. So the platforms are treated really differently in different countries. So in one country there are licenses for this activity, in other they can operate without any regulation, and so on. Partially, crowdfunding regulation that probably will come into force next year, it will solve the issue, but only what concerns business financing, yes. But again, consumer lending will still be quite fragmented in the European Union. And my other point would be on AML, of course, regulation, because again, we see that even in Baltics, for example, digital onboarding, yes, it is treated really differently. So one method that, for example, a company can use in Lithuania might be not suitable in Latvia or Estonia, and vice versa. So here we really welcome this AML regulation from European Union, which will set quite, I hope that it will set quite a harmonized approach to these things. Because we are living in a digital age, yes, and we cannot expect that we will have these local companies operating in each country, having office in each country, because if we want that to continue, we cannot speak about competition with US, China, and other developed in financial services countries.
Thank you, Katarina. I'll just jump in with, we've had our first question in the question and answer box, and it actually addresses partly this, and I hope that Santa and Kilbar will also answer this. Specifically regarding AML requirements, there are still differences among each Baltic country. Are you waiting for a pan-European response, or do you think that the Baltic states could, just the three of them, coordinate? For instance, our questioner asks, the PEP definition is not the same. Perhaps just the three Baltic states could help Baltic companies by coordinating this issue.
It would be and could be maybe a good starting point, because developments on EU level, we know that are taking a lot of time. Yes. So there might be some maybe coordination in how we treat some directive articles in that sense. The problem is that as directives are usually transposed to national law, so some requirements and different treatment comes from national law. So yes, some maybe coordination in how we explain the law, maybe some coordination how we change the law in order at least it is for it to be harmonized in all three Baltic countries could happen. Yeah, it's a good idea actually. Just at least to coordinate some, again, digital onboarding. Yes, how we can do it and what framework we apply for the financial market.
Okay, thank you, Katarina. Moving north, Santa. Differences in the regulatory regimes in the three Baltic states, priorities for decreasing them?
Actually, I think, yes, this
Santa,
is...
if you could put on your video unfortunately is not, we're not seeing you.
I have put?
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe it's bit slow, yeah. Yes, I also can sort of assist Ekaterina's saying on the European regulation. And actually, we also have vocalized towards European institutions that to really consider some directives to become as a regulations to really ensure the common understanding throughout the Europe, also not just within the Baltic states. And also I should say that yes, there is a good cooperation needed, for example, with the policy makers, which are, for example, Ministry of Finance and the institutions putting the laws into the place. So, and then also to harmonize those laws throughout the Baltics, where actually some specifics as the question was regarding politically exposed persons, also was put. So definitely we as the supervisors definitely can somehow influence, but we are not the only ones actually responsible for legal framework as well. So, but here as well, I think we have started very well beginning of this year when we met all three countries together and actually said that there are things we can do together. Unfortunately, COVID impacted our common initiatives a bit, but I believe still that there is still topics on our agenda where we can do something locally, three Baltic states together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Santa. Kilvar?
Yeah, well, I think we have to determine between two things here. First is the regulation, as Santa already mentioned, and we are supervisors, at least in Estonia. I think it's almost the same in other Baltic states. We don't do regulation. And if we are talking about regulation, we have the EU regulation, then Eurozone regulation, and then, of course, national regulation. What comes to the supervisory stuff, I think the Baltic states have pretty tight cooperation there. I mean, we have a number of institutional setups, number of colleges where we on daily basis cooperate. Of course, I mean, for outsiders, maybe it's not that known, and supervisory work is not public. So I can assure that on weekly basis we have phone conferences among colleagues, you know, within auspices of ECB and SSM. We have cooperation, and pretty tight one if necessary. I mean, here I give you an example of AML supervisory work with regard to our Swedish friends or Swedish banking groups. We had very close cooperation there with our Baltic partners. So I think when necessary and when prescribed by regulations, we are sharing the same views, the same values. Our environments are pretty similar to each other. So we are working in quite close cooperation. This PEP definition is really peanuts. Sorry for answering like this harshly. I mean, we have broader issues to discuss, and of course, I mean, the PEP issue will be handled in one way or another. I mean, this is not at least in Estonia, the agenda, it's not number one issue. Sorry. Pauls, we cannot hear you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Kumar, for pointing that out. We sometimes, a question for Sebastian, we sometimes hear complaints here in the Baltics that now, especially with all the emphasis on AML, that our country's regulatory regimes are now significantly more restrictive than in some other European countries. Would you agree with that? And more broadly, how does the region look from the European perspective?
Well, it's not an easy question. I mean, generally speaking, first of all, as it was mentioned, I think, and it has not always been the case, but certainly from the EBS side, no, we advocate also for more regulation. So to make sure that actually, I mean, the framework is the same across Europe, and that no one can use, I would say, regulatory arbitrage or weaker part of Europe to enter the market. So that's very much why we advocate for more at European level, for more harmonization, for more regulation. Well, the framework, I guess, in the Baltic has also been rather influenced also by some of the issues in some of your countries. So I guess you had to react also rather strongly to show that this was taken very seriously. So I don't know, of course, very much into the details, the individual frameworks of the three countries, but what I can tell you is that certainly when we have discussed at European level, at European Banking Federation level, how to support a review of the framework at European level, as I mentioned, we were very much looking also at what was done in the Baltic countries. I think many of your countries have indeed adopted measures which are interesting and perhaps could indeed be also extended more at European level. So I think in this fight we cannot be complacent. We have seen what's happening when there is complacence. So I think we have to be strong. We have to be together. But very important as well, of course, from the banking sector side. I think it's very important that we do not just add on requirements on the banks, because that's not where we will succeed at the end. We're very much convinced that the only way to succeed is by partnering actually between authorities and the private sector.
Okay, I have a question specifically for Katarina. I was looking at the latest statistics about financial services exports in the 3 Baltic states, and we've seen that while they've fallen quite precipitously in Latvia over the past couple of years, fallen somewhat in Estonia, but in Lithuania they're on the rise. We also hear a lot about fintech companies registering in Lithuania. How would you explain this? Is that because of differences in the regulatory system, or are there some other factors that are influencing the rise in financial services exports in Lithuania?
Yeah, I would say that one part definitely is coming from institutions that are registered in Lithuania but providing services abroad. Yes, but I wouldn't claim that it is the biggest part. I know this statistics, and we analyzed it a bit. Actually, some work of, I cannot name specific companies, but there are big financial companies that are not like providing financial services, yes, to end users. It is more like operating in Lithuania and have some operational establishment in Lithuania. So I know that they contribute to this statistics as well. But your question probably is more about this regulatory regime that allows electronic money and payment institutions to set up the company in Lithuania and operate in all European Union. So yes, it is part of our strategy, as Sant already said, and I mentioned it, which was set 4 years ago. So probably we see the results. Yes, increasing number of companies, increasing number of companies operating not only in Lithuania but abroad as well, and contributing to the export statistics as well. Yes, and you asked about regulatory regime, whether there is some differences on that side. Yes.
Yes, I did, because if I understand correctly, some colleagues of mine said that there have recently been some sanctions against some fintech companies by the regulator. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm mistaken, but I was told that.
No, you are not mistaken, but it's a natural thing when you have I don't know, 200 companies, yes, operating added to our financial market. So yes, naturally there are sanctions because and maybe society hears more open that it heard maybe 4 years ago, because the market was really a small one. Now it is bigger, so the news about sanctions come much open. But answering about regulation or about the specific maybe regulatory regime, which is maybe more alluring to these fintech companies coming to Lithuania. So there is no regulatory arbitrage here in that sense. What we did, we invested heavily actually in this user experience, yes, for these companies. And a lot of programs, newcomer program, when we allow companies to come here to look into the eyes of regulator. Yes, we invested our time to that, because usually it is like a formal process, and nobody sees the regulator whom he will be dealing with. So this user experience, yes, newcomer program, sandbox, and many other programs, I think that it was the main factor actually contributing to the companies establishing in Lithuania. Not just some, cutting corners and not looking, you know, to some things because okay, we allow, I don't know, criminals to come to the market. No, it was not the goal, and it is not the case.
Okay, thank you, Katarina. I have a question for both Santa and Kilvad regarding the way banks are reacting to these more to the hard, well, the tougher line on AML procedures and so forth that Latvia and Estonia have taken recently. Certainly in Latvia, we've heard top politicians recently saying we've gone too far, the banks are not willing to take enough risks, they have to be able to be more open to customers. And we heard you talk about that as well. Now I'd like you to, maybe you could give us an idea, to what extent do you think the risk aversion is because of the regulations that have been put in place, and to what extent it's the banks that simply have to be able to use those regulations, the existing regulatory regime, and learn how to function in that in a more efficient way so as not to close down the market too much. How much is it on the regulator? How much is it on the banks? Maybe you could answer that. Santa, maybe you could start on this.
Yes, I still see that the video is sort of lagging behind the sound. So yeah, yes, I think we've been given very short time, like 2 years back, when we harshly introduced the different regulation, more tough regulation, and sort of that was really to make sure that there is no like loopholes where some you know bad guys can do their businesses into the money laundering. But now I think when we've gone through that phase, now we have entered the phase of you know balancing out, and I see this also like not coming throughout the night. It is the process when everybody understands, you know, what should be changed within the regulation, what should be changed in the, you know, risk-based approach within the banks, what should be changed within the businesses also working here. So, and as I said already previously, that this to balance out, everyone needs to sort of take some action into that. So, and there is no one answer, whether this is just a regulation, just the banks, everyone actually needs to put one step forward, that one, to really involve in the dialogue, listen in and understand actually where the problem is, to try to make the answers or to help then to solve the problem. So, and that's the existing phase of our cooperation with the banks. We came up this summer with the manual how to treat the regulation. Then during the conversations, during the dialogue, we understood that actually this will not be enough. And now we are in a phase to adjust the legislation to help the banks to introduce the risk-based approach, not just to really avoid the risk, but to manage the risks. And that's I believe that after I have some kind of time metrics that I said that after the year when we passed our exam with the Moneyval and FAT, we should be also balanced out. So this is my personal target.
So what do you think is the most important change that has to be made in legislation now? And when do you see that happening?
Mm-hmm. It's not like very dramatic changes. Those are number of adjustments. Some is the regulations. We are the owners of those regulations. There's some laws like the common AML law. There is law of credit institutions. There's some adjustments here and there, and I believe that will help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kilvad?
Thanks. I understand the issue you were raising is the excessive de-risking, so closure of accounts, that the businesses cannot make business anymore, and then the pensioner cannot buy food in local store, right? I think, you know, to answer this question, I mean, we have to scroll back. What's the issue? What's the real issue here? I mean, we have AML regulations in place, and the idea of AML regulations is to to address criminals, basically, to address like rogue states. I mean, North Korea, nuclear programs. I mean, probably we as a Western society here, we are not interested in that, you know, criminals can launder their money, that the rogue states can operate and push their will through. So we have to keep this in mind quite firmly. And not only our Baltic banks, but also the, you know, the whole banking industry is working on this issue, our correspondent banks as well. So this is the starting point. So of course we have heard those arguments in Estonia as well, and we have mapped the account closure issue here in Estonia. The outcome broadly is the following: yes, banks have de-risked, but bulk of it, the most of it is for real reasons. And sometimes the real reasons are not discussed in public. Sometimes it's only discussed that somebody lost his very, how to say, lucrative business, so to say, but the contents of the business are not discussed publicly. However, having said that, yes, indeed, there are certain circumstances, occasional circumstances where the accounts have been closed down for no specific or good reason. And there we have been putting quite good emphasis on our banking industry to smarten their risk control systems. I know that they have been investing quite heavily to their information technology systems to up the game there, and they are continuing to do that. As I mentioned in my introductory remark just a couple of days ago, our 4 largest banks, together with one of our fintechs, announced one of the common projects where they try to address namely this specific issue. And also we are giving our input, our know-how basis there to this initiative as well. So all in all, I think the issue to some extent is there. I think somehow it is over-amplified, but the issue is there, and I know that the banks are very seriously working on that. The regulation is not answer here. The regulation is not answer here because our Baltic banking industry is not operating in vacuum. We have our own correspondent banking relationships, and we want to keep them.
Okay, thank you, Cobalt. We had a fairly specific question, but maybe someone can answer this. One of our listeners asked, is there a document or an analysis that compares how different articles of EU directives have been transposed into national law in the 3 Baltic states? Has anyone done that kind of comparison? Do you know?
I mean, if I may, I mean,
yes,
first of all, there should be demand for that. I mean, what is the purpose of it? And then, of course, I mean, if there is a business case for it, some law firm maybe has done it in in narrow way or in broader way. I think, you know, what we should keep in mind, we are still 3 different states, and we have 3 different societies. My master is our parliament. I mean, if the parliament wants to adopt law in a certain way, so be it. And in a way, I think it's very, in a way, unilateral way to see things that we should harmonize everything. I think harmonization is a good thing to a certain extent. I think what we should do, and not in the Baltic states, I think the Baltics, the cooperation is there, and I have comparison moment with other regions of Europe. Cooperation is there. We need broader and deeper cooperation in Europe. Take the example of AML. I mean, the basis for good cooperation is sharing quality information, and to share quality information, you need information quality. Do we have quality information on AML? No, we don't. Do I see appetite in dealing with that? No, I don't see it. I see only appetite to regulate in Europe, and I think this is wrong path. I think the real, if we really want to attack AML issues, the ways are different, and I think creating common institutions, of course, this is one way how to address it, but more in-depth cooperation and with real will to attack the risks is another story, and I prefer another story as a starting point.
Thank you, Kilbar. We are almost out of time, so I just wanted to ask one last question, which is, the three regulators are here in one panel. What is something that one of your neighbors has done that you would like to implement, that you think is a good example? Maybe I'll start with Kilbar and go down south this time. Kilbar, what do you see in the neighboring countries that you wish you had?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question, actually. Yes, and thanks for letting me start me first. Well, I will start with the immediate. Most probably you mean not Russia and not Finland, but you probably mean Latvia and Lithuania.
Yes,
am I
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm not that aware of what's going on in Russian financial market, and let's skip this part of this.
Yeah.
Latvia. I mean, what I really admire how they have, how to say, prepared for Moneyval, how they have improved, or you actually, I have to say, because you are Latvian, how you have been improving your framework and also institutional capacity on AML. It's this amazing story, and it's something what we definitely are looking very carefully, because as I said, we have this Moneyval going on with regard to Estonia and pretty soon in near future. This is with regard to Latvia. Lithuania as well, I mean, not that I'm big fan of it, but still from the technical perspective, the fintech project, I mean, it is executed almost flawlessly. I mean, and this is something what really we in our supervisory authority admire. I mean, we have not been doing that because we have slightly different view on this, but I think how Lithuania has addressed it and how it has executed it, excellent. Those are the two positives.
Great, thank you very much. Very concrete and short and very interesting. Santa?
Yes, I think I admire a lot Lithuanians, not just because of fintech, but because of the, how all stakeholders within the Lithuania, agreed to have the common strategy, and everyone put some effort into that, and then that became as the really powerful marketing, powerful engagement in all in everyone, in all institutions, and then that becomes sort of very visible for everyone, and really put some kind of good marketing mark on a state as such. But when we talk about Estonia, I think you guys really managed to also going through different AML, also scandals with Danske, and so you still manage to keep calm and not fall into some big holes. Just you still stayed on the road and executed what should be executed, but also very, I think, good approach and very professional approach towards that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Santa. Finally, Katarina.
Yes, I will be quick as well. So Latvia, our closest neighbor, I envy Ilze Znotina. She is the head of FIU, Latvian FIU. To Latvia, because it is really a bright and progressive person that I think contributed, Santa, I might be wrong, but I think that you and Ilze contributed really severely to the progress that Latvia shows in AML area. And we really, here in Lithuania, still lack this good partnership with our local FIU, but we are trying to do our best to have it. And what's coming to Estonia, capital market. I still looking in Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, the capital market, although it is small as well, but I think that it is really advanced, especially for funds, for some state-owned companies that are on the regulated market. So I think that it is really a good initiative as well, and executed as well, really good. So we are trying to do that, but still we do not.
Great, thank you, Katarina. Well, we ran a little bit over, but I think we had a very interesting discussion. Thank you to all the panelists. I think we got a lot of concrete concrete answers, and I hope they were useful to everybody who was listening. Thank you to everyone who joined us online. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and remember there's another one next week, so sign up for that about financial markets, which Katarina mentioned just now. Thank you to Cobalt and Finance Latvia Association for organizing this discussion, and have a good day.